Greetings. Welcome to Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club. I'm Dr. English and I teach English. The last 2 weeks I have finished out reviewing Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games with Catching Fire and Mockingjay. And I finished watching the movies just so I could be reminded of how they interpreted the movies. And then I went to my local library and got the last 2 books, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and the Sunrise on the Reaping. And this one is about Coriolanus Snow, or President Snow, and his origin story. This one was over 500 pages long, and I felt like, wow, that this one was really drug out, and I kind of struggled to finish this and keep my attention. I felt it was tedious to read, and I feel like in this one in particular, I felt like Suzanne Collins really struggled to come up with names. Some of the names that she gave to the tributes are just so nonsensical, and I thought, man, I don't know if she just put things in a randomizer online or something to get the names, but some of them have, like significance though, because Lucy Gray Baird is, seems like it's, I mean, there's a definite plan. You learn more about that naming in the Sunrise in the Reaping. Which I feel like the first 3 books really tied together really about Katniss, and the last 2 books really tied together Coriolanus Snow and Hamish Abernathy. You see, they seem like 2 totally different worlds in some ways, and I suppose that's true if you're thinking about like, it was, this one is like the 10th Hunger Games, so Coriolanus Snow is very young. He's 18. And the Hunger Games haven't really been established, and so it's very primitive in how they do the Hunger Games in this particular book. So this book takes a lot of time giving us a lot about, she really tries to work into a real history of Coriolanus Snow in his youth. And I think the one thing that I really didn't like about this was how I felt like she was trying to make us sympathetic to him in this book about, he was once he has this, long pedigree of the Snows, and it was like they lost everything in the war. And I'm like, that was really hard for me to swallow, because I just thought, that's not typically how things go. I mean, maybe if you're the Romanovs or something and you get killed because people take it over. But I just feel like it seems like, trying to make it seem like the royalty, of the wealthiest people, have fallen on hard times. And that may have been true, like in the stock market crash, there are a lot of very wealthy people, jumped out of buildings. So, but it was just really hard for me as a reader to be empathetic to Coriolanus. I think the one thing that really did strike me was that, that he actually fell in love, and that's believable. A lot of people turn really, into horrible individuals when they've been broken by love, that it just breaks them down. But to me, that's way more sinister than that, in that, it was beyond that. I can't give away spoilers for anybody, but I felt like that was the part about this book that I was kind of insulted as I was reading. I'm like, really? You're just really trying too hard to make us really be sympathetic or empathetic to Coriolanus. It was just very hard. And there was the arrogance of her grandmam. I don't know if I said that right. The only, to me, the redeemable person in here is Tigress. I liked her. I liked her a lot. I feel like she could have really fleshed out her character a whole lot more on my behalf. I would have loved that. I would have loved to have had her story. And so, especially in light of what happens later, because this is before the Hunger Games, and then we find out a lot more about Tigress in the Hunger Games, especially Mockingjay, where we see this very empathetic character, who didn't lose who she was, and having I just watched that movie and the second part, I was just like, oh, because Katniss says something about Snow right to her, and she doesn't, it's just like having read this and then the Sunrise on the Reaping, it's like, oh, it's really funny in some ways, how Tigress helped, Katniss, knowing she wanted to kill the president, which was her cousin. So I felt like that was really quite interesting. So I love to tie all these loose ends together too. That makes that's a huge thing in my opinion too, is like to be able to do that. But I love that, she introduces the Hanging Tree song in the Mockingjay. And so we get a lot more background on that, especially in this. Like there's Lucy Gray Baird is an incredibly gifted singer, and you really get that real bluegrass kind of folk music feel in this, in the lyrics of this. And so I really appreciated that. Uh, but like they said, the names and all that was just like, it was kind of ridiculous. So I had to just kind of plow through that and just roll my eyes. And I think there are some people who thought, what was the point of this book? And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, was it necessary to write this? I suppose in her mind it was, but um, I think it was just trying to, I think people want to know what makes people evil. Maybe that was the question she was trying to, respond. Maybe some of her readers really wanted to know this. And so a lot of times authors, that are very popular in a series, they do that because their readers want to know these things. Like, who is this Coriolanus Snow? How did he get to be who he is? So in that, that origin story, it's kind of like the Darth Vader thing. People want to know, well, what happened to Darth Vader? And then we get it, and in the next, 3 movies, we get, the origin story of Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker, so I think it's just a human nature to want that, maybe, I don't know. So I can't say, that I hated it, because I was engaged for 517 pages. But it just kind of, I think she drug it out quite a bit, but I I love the character of Lucy Gray Baird. I just thought she was a very unlikely hero. And it was nice to know that, District 12 had a female victor previously, but they don't really know anything about her. And I just think, maybe that she was, wasn't mentioned in the first 3 books because, it was an invention of hers after the fact. So I found that was kind of fascinating too. I'm going to read a longer passage, um, but it's between Lucy Gray and Coriolanus. And so bear with me as I read. This is a little bit longer passage. No, thank you for saving my life. He said it lightly, but as he gazed into her eyes, the levity leached away. Is that what you're telling people, she asked, that I saved your life? He had said as much to Tigress and the game Grand Mam, and then, perhaps unsure what to do with the information, he let it drift from his thoughts like a dream. Now, with the empty seats of the fallen around them, the memory of how she'd rescued him in the arena demanded his attention, and he could not ignore its significance. If Lucy Gray had not helped him, he would be utterly, irrevocably dead. Another shiny coffin, dripping flowers, another empty chair. When he spoke again, the words caught in his throat before he forced them out. I told my family, really. Thank you, Lucy Gray. Well, I had some time on my hands, she said, tracing the frosted flower on a cookie with a shaky forefinger. Pretty cookies. Then came confusion. If she had saved his life, he owed her, what, a sandwich and 2 cookies? That was how he was repaying her for his life, which apparently he had held quite cheaply. The truth was, he owed her everything. He felt the blush burn all over his cheeks. You could have run, and if you had, I would have gone up in the flames before they reached me. Run, huh? Seemed like a lot of effort to get shot, she said. Coriolanus shook his head. You can joke, but it won't change what you did for me. I hope I can repay you in some way. I hope so too, she said. In those few words, he sensed a shift in their dynamic. As her mentor, he'd been the gracious giver of gifts, always to be met with gratitude. Now she'd upended things by giving him a gift beyond compare. On the surface, everything looked the same. Chained girl, boy offering food, peacekeepers guarding that status quo. But deep down, things could never be the same between them. He would always be in her debt. She had the right to demand things. I don't know how, he admitted. Lucy Gray glanced around the room, taking in her wounded competitors. Then she looked him in the eye, and impatience tinged her voice. You could start by thinking I can actually win. I think that's a really powerful scene in this novel. And it comes at 153. There's still, 300 and some pages left to go. So I don't think I would teach this book. It's very long and it's tedious, I think, in some ways. But I definitely would recommend it to students to read as supplemental reading, because I still see it as I'm substitute teaching in the area in the middle schools. I still see Catching Fire. I still see Mockingjay on kids' desk for their reading. So I think this might overwhelm a middle schooler, but I think that it's definitely something you could recommend to your students to read. It could be if you might have a Hunger Games, reading club or something after school too. It'd be a lot of fun to do that with students, just to have them talk about it. because I'd love to hear what their response would be to my, interpretation of this book. They might totally disagree with me, and I love that. We would have some really lively conversations about this book. So, you could also, absolutely do it as a book club book. Let the kids munch on it a little bit and see what kind of opinions I have about it. So, thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next week when I review the latest 2025 book by Suzanne Collins, Sunrise on the Reaping. Thanks for joining me. Bye.